That was a really clean intro there, folks. It's Thursday. I'm Fred McMurray. It's 2 p.m. Pacific, which means this has to be... Ladies, you ready for another show? Kristin, you're muted.
I just did an Elizabeth.
It's
Friday Eve. Yes, it's Friday Eve. Thank you.
Did an Elizabeth. Very bad. Very bad.
I don't know if that's the reputation I really want, but I guess it is what it is.
It is. It is. Welcome to Pillars of Franchising, everybody. It is Friday Eve, and we are live here with a great guest today. But first, of course, we begin each show with a word on the street.
Word on the street, and I have some exciting news that I haven't even told you yet.
Wait, what? Seriously?
Yeah. This guy that we're about to talk about has agreed to come on the show.
You got him?
I got him. I haven't got a date pinned down yet, but he's willing to come on. So let's tell everybody who he is. His name is Shan Sharif. He's with Yum. He came over from Pakistan in the 80s, started at low-level KFC, working, a hourly rate job, and has persisted over the years with franchising, took a little bit of a segue into insurance. But now has one of each brand in the Yum system. He's got the Taco Bell, the KFC, the Pizza Hut, and the Habit Burger, and is doing really, really well, and has developed this love of franchising and leadership. So I'm really excited to talk to him about just exactly how you come in as an 18-year-old immigrant and work your way through this. He loves the Yum brand franchise models.
I have to tell you, when I read his story, I sent this to you a couple weeks ago when I first saw it, and I was like, oh my gosh, what a great story. A true coming to America story, right? Mm-hmm. And especially over the last couple of years, there's been all this kind of negativity and stuff, so these kinds of stories really move me. And not only just the fact that he came here and made such a great life for himself and his family, but he had some really great things to say about franchising in general. And one of the questions, this actually came from Franchise 500, actually, by Entrepreneur. And one of the questions they said is, what can franchisees do to uphold franchisor loyalty? And it was so simple, right? Just do what they ask you to do, right? And we talk about that on the show all the time, about just follow the system. It's not hard from a complication standpoint. Is it hard work? Yes. Do you have to do your part? Yes. But it's very interesting. And when they said, what piece of advice would you offer to new franchisees? He's like, don't screw anybody over, right? Just be authentic, be true to the brand, do your best, right? And it's so simple. If you owe your employees $50, give them $55. It's not the end of the world, right? Such a down to earth, pay it forward.
He hasn't forgotten his roots.
No, not at all.
As in his mind, when he says, if you owe him 50, give him 55, he said to you, that's $5. To them, it's a meal.
Yeah.
So having kept that in mind, I think makes him an even better leader. And talking about brand loyalty, he said, when you make a mistake, you might lose a customer or two, but if you do something atrocious, it reflects the whole brand. You're the KFC guy who did this horrible thing. So he's very cognizant of his individual impact, but also his impact on a system.
Yeah. And, I'm afraid of food because it's not what I know, right? And everybody always says, if you've not worked in food before, that's not where you want to make your first move in franchising is food. And so when I read this and the things he said about it, I'm like, wow, he really was inspiring for me. He said, why have you stuck with the same franchisor all these years? And he says, it's just so simple to me, right? Like, if you have something good, why rock the boat? I know the brand. I can open a location and not be worried about how their operation's going to run. I feel that if I were to go to another brand, I'd be downgrading myself. All the franchise coaches we have are really nice people. I'm a 5-star operator, but I've got 40, or I'm sorry, a 5-store operator, but I have 40 people working behind me. This is exactly what we talk about. We talk about this is the beauty of being in a franchise system with a strong franchisor, with all the team behind you. They're not in your business every day, but they're there as a backup if you need them. You set the culture for your businesses, but they're there if you need something in the background. And one of the other things,
go ahead.
Okay. And this is really important to me because this is the one thing when I talked last week with Vetted Biz about Molly Maid, we talked a little bit about how these brands helped the franchisees in COVID, right? And again, so I read this, I'm like, oh my gosh, I almost want to buy a restaurant. And then I go, no, I don't. What has Yum Brands done? How has Yum Brands been there for you as a franchisee? And he said, they've always been coming up with new stuff, which helps us bring in more customers. And then there's the support you get. For instance, when COVID started right away, KFC and Taco Bell emailed all the franchisees saying you can postpone your royalty sale for 60 days or 90 days. Don't worry about it. Run your restaurant and do whatever you can. Who does that?
Yeah. And then he talked about by the brand doing that, it now allowed him to pay it forward to his employees and have a little more flexibility, try to work with them a little bit more as people were off for being sick or off for childcare or whatever it was. So when you have a solid brand like that, that pay it forward mentality is really critical to the success of the whole entire system.
And that's exactly what he did, Elizabeth, when they were closed. And now, okay, so this is also part of if you follow the program with PPP, they were closed and they still paid their employees. I mean, and so we talk a lot about culture, right? That's what he's doing, is building the culture. And I really hope for him that he didn't lose any of his employees, because he did the right thing with the circumstances and all. He did the best he could with what he had at the time. So hats off to him. I cannot wait to have him on the show. So I'm really super excited. I'm glad you were able to get a hold of him. So Sean, Sharif, we are excited. I am super excited to talk to you soon. Hats off to you.
Yep.
And Yum Brands.
We will pin it down in the next couple of days, hopefully. So,
awesome.
He's going to be a great story.
Yay.
Just like our guest today.
Another food, right? Okay, so this one made me get hungry. It did. Shannon Swenson. I was reading about this and I was like, oh my God, I'm so hungry. And then I realized I didn't eat lunch.
Well, that's not good.
Yeah.
Well, you need to go on our Instagram page. It's very craveable.
Well, not only that, but I just even went to the home site and I realized that there are several restaurants here in my area. And I'm like, oh my God, I got to go check this place out.
Well, wonderful. Where are you located?
I'm in Chicago.
Okay. Yeah. I think we have either 2 or 3 locations, and we have 2 very strong franchise groups that are growing throughout that area.
That's awesome. Yep. I saw you got one in the city and you've got one in Naperville, and I forget the second location. I think it's near the city. So, but first let's talk about you, Elizabeth. You want to talk about Sharon, and then Shannon, and then I can't wait to talk about the brand.
Yeah. Yes. Let's do a little intro so people have a little background understanding from what Shannon is doing. She is the Vice President of Franchise Development at Dave's Hot Chicken, a Nashville hot chicken concept based in Los Angeles. She's held this role since October of 2019, and under her leadership, they have signed over 50 operators and over 600 committed units, including a development in Canada and the Middle East. She has more than 18 years of experience in franchise development, has worked for the brands such as Image for Kids, Twin Peaks Restaurants, and Salsaritas Fresh Mexican Grill, where she has supported both corporate and franchise growth. She has an MBA in marketing management and global business from the University of Dallas. So that gives you a bit of a background, but I am really excited to find out how she did all this. And these 600 commitments were over the last 2 years. So during a pandemic, I think this is going to be really exciting to understand exactly how you were able to keep all those moving parts going under duress.
Yeah, I mean, they say everything is bigger in Texas, but I mean, 600 units during COVID is like outrageously large. Tell us about that. I mean, how do you do that? Irrespective of what the brand is, how do you move forward in these circumstances like that at that pace?
Yeah, absolutely. So we launched our franchising in October of 2019. I had come on board with Dave's Hot Chicken, and when I joined the concept, they only had one restaurant open. Which a lot of times, when they were first recruiting me for the concept, I thought, the one restaurant, they're not ready for franchising. But I flew out to LA, met the team, realized a lot of the team was the team that had been behind the launch of Blaze Pizza, which was a very fast growing concept as well. So I realized there was a really strong leadership and it was a great product. So I ended up joining them in October of 2019. We did our first PR release right about that time. And the leads started coming in, fairly quickly, had high level interest in the brand. But as we know, our world changed a few months after that. I mean, it was in December of that year that the COVID cases started being reported. And then it was, February, March, the following year that the shutdowns happened. So certainly for most franchise brands, that's a scary time. And as everybody knows, the restaurant industry in particular got hit very hard during this time. And at that time as well, the majority of our restaurants were in LA, and California completely shut down. Yeah. So we were looking at it from both fronts. First our restaurant shut down, so we had to figure out how we could pivot very quickly through that. And we got online ordering in place within a week. Focused heavily on third-party delivery, and instead of our sales going down, our sales soared. We went up 20% in sales within a month's time after COVID shutdowns. We also have very, very strong volume, so that helped. But certainly, we were very surprised that the brand did so well during COVID. Also, I very quickly pivoted. So I realized that I couldn't keep franchising going unless we could engage with candidates. And our process before had been we'd invite candidates to LA for an in-person discovery day, and they'd meet the team and we'd tour the restaurant. We had a whole approach to how we introduced candidates to the concept. And so within a week, I pivoted. And in my previous life, I had never used Zoom for my franchise sales process. And, so I thought, okay, how can I make sure that we're still engaging with candidates? We're introducing them to the concept, introducing them to leadership, and keeping things going forward. So we shifted our discovery day process to Zoom discovery calls. So what we do is when I engage with a candidate, if they're qualified, I get them on a call with all of our leadership and we take them through a presentation. So instead of an in-person discovery day, we're now doing an in-person Zoom discovery call. Once they qualify after that call, we then have them put together a business plan, and they actually present their business plan back to us via Zoom. And so what we found during this time, kind of out of necessity because of COVID shutdowns, is that we got very efficient with our process. So we were able to engage with candidates faster. We were able, instead of them having to buy a plane ticket, get out to meet us, to get engaged with our team, we were able to do that all through Zoom. We were able to, be very efficient about our business plan review process and everything else. And so instead of a lot of, slowing down in franchising, which would have happened to most concepts, instead ours just took off. So we signed all 600 of those commitments in the last 2 years throughout COVID, from basically January of 2020 till now. It's been my biggest couple of years of my career in 18 years has been awesome. During this time, which was a very tough time for the restaurant industry as a whole.
So Shannon, I'm curious about getting these commitments launched. How many stores have you opened, and what challenges are you facing because of supply chain issues or hiring issues and that kind of thing with these franchisees who are starting in kind of a pit economically as a country, and with the COVID and the unknowns? How are you helping them navigate through that process? Because I think it's a challenging time for anybody to start a business, but with strong leadership behind them, what are you able to do to help them through that?
Yes, absolutely. So at the beginning of last year, 2021, we had 7 locations open. We ended the year with 40 locations open, and we're on track this year to open 80 locations. So we're scaling up very, very quickly. One thing is we were very committed to, we only bring on very high level multi-unit restaurant operators. So we don't bring on any startups. We're not training people in the restaurant industry. We're bringing on very experienced restaurant operators. So that's really helped during this time. But when COVID very first started, we had one of our restaurants open in San Diego that opened as a restaurant that was during the shutdown. So they opened with only third-party delivery and takeout, which that was very interesting. That was a first for everybody to basically open a restaurant during a shutdown. And again, they opened with phenomenal sales, as third-party delivery and takeout only. Another challenge we had is we were opening in Canada during the shutdowns. Canada was actually shut down to where we could not get training teams into Canada during their opening. So as another first, we did training all via Zoom. And now that's not an ideal situation, and we won't stick with that process. But it was what we had to do to get the restaurant open. And again, they opened up with phenomenal sales and lines out the door and executed operationally very well. So it was really a test to our entire team of how to get creative about very challenging times during the restaurant industry. Obviously, as we all know, during shutdowns and heightened unemployment, the restaurant industry was also hit very hard of labor shortages. Fortunately for us, we did pay, I think we paid $3 extra an hour for kind of like hazard pay, for people working during COVID. That helped. And also the fact that we're just kind of a cool brand. People do want to work for our concept. So we have been surprised that, we are normally able to staff up. We certainly are finding a lot of challenges in supply chain, equipment, fryers that used to take 6 weeks to get, now take 6 months to get. Yeah. So we're preparing our vendors in advance for our growth because we have such substantial growth. We need even more. So we're preparing our vendors for that. And a lot of our franchisees that, know that they have multiple restaurants opening up, they're getting storage buildings and buying equipment way in advance because you need to be prepared for that. So you just kind of have to stay on top of all of these issues during these trying times. We also are having issues with, a lot of our logoed packaging, our logoed cups and logo to go packaging and stuff is obviously stuck out in ships coming from China. And so, those are just some things we kind of have to do without right now.
Wow. It's interesting when I read the story about Dave's Hot Chicken and the 4 friends who started this whole thing. And, I could say all of their first names, but I couldn't figure out how to pronounce not one. Well, okay, Keller, I could say his last name, but the other 3, I'm like, oh yeah, I couldn't say their last names. I find it really interesting.
And Agnesian.
Yeah, I could not get there. Hi, Mickey. I see Mickey in the background. But $900 to build this little place to get it going. And I love how after being open, they throw it out on Instagram, right? And 2 nights later, after Eater LA shows up, the place is booming crazy with lines around the building.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about
true rags to riches, American dream kind of story, without a doubt.
Yeah. And so when you're talking about pivoting and you guys doing 600 stores and, during COVID, I'm like, well, that's just very much like this, throw it out on Instagram and here they all come. I mean, it's really amazing. They've really got a great story to tell. I can't wait to check it out. And it shows here you guys have everything from mild to Reaper, and the website it truly did make my mouth water. So where do you see the brand going in the next 12 to 24 months? What are the goals? What are the markets you're looking to hit?
Well, so, we're truly growing coast to coast at this point. Obviously the brand started in LA. So originally most of our locations opened throughout California. Then we expanded to Portland, to Denver, then jumped up to Chicago. We now have locations open in Dallas, Fort Worth, and Houston. But I have recently started selling very heavy on the East Coast. So last week just sold 2 territories in New York for upstate New York, as well as Manhattan and Brooklyn. We are growing throughout Florida. So really, we're just coast to coast. And early on, we were approached by a big developer in Canada. So we were, obviously growing in Canada. And then 2 weeks ago, we just signed a 50-store commitment for the Middle East. So we should be opening in the Middle East by the end of the year. So really, Dave's Hot Chicken is going to be worldwide within the next 12 to 18 months.
Wow, it is hot. So,
Yes.
It is
So-
on
It
fire.
definitely is hot.
yeah, it is definitely hot. It is reefer hot, according to this. So,
It
so
is.
my question is, we always ask franchisors, tell us a little bit about the commitment to get in. Obviously, I heard you say that you're looking for experienced restaurateurs, so to speak, people who are familiar with the industry. You're looking for multi-unit buy-in, right? You're not looking for onesie twosie. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. Yeah, all of our operators have to own at least 5 or more restaurants, although I'd say a good portion of our operators probably own 30 plus restaurants. So it has to kind of match the equivalent of the territory size they're going to sign on for. So our minimum franchise commitment is 5 locations. Most franchisees sign on in the 10-store range.
Okay. And for those that are looking to get into this, that have that kind of experience, what are we talking in terms of investment and, first year working capital? What are you looking for?
Yeah, so the build out cost per restaurant, your all-in investment cost can range from $588,000 to $980,000, with most of them costing in about the $850 range. So because we are looking for franchisees that can build territories in the 5 to 10 store range, we're normally looking for about $1 million in liquid assets. Because since we're a young brand, most banks are requiring that our franchisees need to fully fund the first location, and then they can normally get lending on the second location going forward.
Okay. And let me ask you, what do you think? I mean, obviously the chicken industry, you're going into a pretty full, there's a lot of different options out there, right? For somebody looking for chicken. What makes Dave's the one? What makes Dave's the chosen brand, not only for somebody looking to enter into that particular category, but what about even for somebody looking to go and eat? What makes Dave's so
Yeah,
special?
absolutely. Well, I think as everybody, in the restaurant industry has known that chicken has been a hot category for some time. And as the American, chicken is a staple food product. And so that's why, Chick-fil-A and Raising Cane's and, a lot of the chicken competitors are on every corner because, and they're packed, So chicken is just kind of a mainstream, food product. Dave's is very differentiated between the Chick-fil-A's and the Raising Cane's and the KFC's and everything else because it's got the Nashville hot flavor. And the younger demographic is really drawn to these spicy flavor profiles. They're drawn to concepts that are really hot on social media, which we are. And so it really is just this very craveable and bold flavor profile. And then you also see that we kind of hit this opportunity right at a time that Nashville hot in particular was becoming very popular. It all of a sudden started getting introduced on multiple different menus where they were trying a Nashville hot style flavor. So at this point, we're really the only true national player in the Nashville hot space. It's very popular, but most of them are owned by more mom and pop or one-off locations. So we really are poised to be the major national player in this segment.
Okay, excellent. And so we always ask people, and obviously your information will be all over our website, but if somebody wants to get in touch with you or is interested in Dave's Hot Chicken, how can they go about getting a hold of you?
Yeah, absolutely. So if they just go to our website at daveshotchicken.com, there's a section on our website to inquire about franchise information. It's a very brief form that they can fill out, and then I get back with them within 24 hours.
Awesome. You are one busy lady.
Yes.
I appreciate
It's
your
fun.
time.
I like to be busy.
Yeah, well, I don't know how you do it. And we know you have children as well. And now you have a new dog. And so I can't imagine how you get it all done, but in 24 hours, I think that's fabulous. Congratulations on your great success. I'm excited to see where Dave's Hot Chicken goes, especially with all of your stuff going internationally. Shannon Swenson with Dave's Hot Chicken out of Texas. Thank you again so very much for joining us. And we'll look forward to catching up with you again in the next 6 to 12 months to find out where you've gone.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, franchise owners. How's your local marketing? Do you feel like you could use some help keeping up with your social media posts and comments and reviews? Do you wonder if you could be doing more to attract local customers? Are you able to identify new move-ins to your local area? At Westvine, we help franchisees like you reach more local customers through digital marketing. With daily monitoring, creative content, and ad placement, and customer data intelligence, we'll get your business in front of the people who want your products or services. We also work with franchisors who need an agency to handle the digital marketing for all of their locations. If you're ready to reach more local customers, give us a call at 805-265-5440 or visit us at westbuying.com. That's 805-265-5440 or westbuying.com.
Sherry.
Kristin, so great to see you again.
And you as well. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. I could stand a little warmer weather, right? I'm sure you're feeling the effects there.
Yeah, it was 10 degrees this morning. And you know, as Ray always likes to do, especially when he's away, he knows how much I hate the cold weather. He sent me a nice photo of him and Daisy, but only their feet, so I could see the sand and the beach and the palm trees.
That's just all sorts of wrong, isn't it?
He's such a pal. Yeah.
Well, we had a great guest on, didn't we? Shannon,
oh my God.
That's an amazing concept.
It really is. And, you know, I can just totally envision these guys out there on their first night making this chicken, and then, you know, to have Eater LA come out and start Instagramming it. I mean, that's just kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? I want to call it old school, but it's really, there's another word for it, that kind of guerrilla marketing almost, only it's the new way because it's all social media, right?
Well, and they know their demographics. And so you've got the hot side, which the demographic.
Going to help them is the fact that they are a little more selective. They are looking for experienced restaurant owners, right? And a lot of times in franchise, we talk about, you know, not having to have experience. And in their model, they've changed it up a little bit, but that's how they can explain such great growth.
Yeah, I mean, the people they're bringing in already understand the franchise industry. They just need to know more about Dave's Hot Chicken, so they understand how to present it and how to put it together and so on. So it's brilliant.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, so I guess today we're going to be talking about some more Live It to Own It.
Well, yeah, and it fits right in with what we just talked about. You know, the next chapter, the chapter we're going to talk about today, is called the tempo effect. Mm-hmm. And this is a tool my writing partner, and my partner in the joint actually has used with massive companies across the globe to change the way they do business. And it's perfect for the franchising industry. It's perfect for new franchisees looking at, you know, whether they got the skill sets and how they have to change and modify some of the ways they approach things in order to be successful franchisees. So it's one of the longer chapters in the book for good reason. There's a lot of information in there. So I'm just gonna tap into just a little bit of it today. But the tempo effect literally is an acronym. Tempo is an acronym, and T stands for time. Right? Time is something we cannot replace. It has to be our most highly leveraged resource. We've got to manage it. We've got to leverage it. We've got to use it to our best impact, right?
Yep,
and
absolutely.
You know me, one of the acronyms I love is OPT, which is other people's time, right? So finding great people. I like to hire people smarter than me so that they can go out and use their time to get all of us to a different spot in, you know, the continuum. And then E is expertise. And that's one part of that is the expertise you bring. If you worked in corporate America in marketing, then maybe some of your marketing expertise will help in this endeavor. If you worked in the back office doing payroll or doing, bill paying or any of those kinds of things, human resources, all of those things are a piece of this. So when you're looking at a franchise, if your skill set matches, or if there will be a big demand on your skill set from that franchise, maybe that's a really good fit for you.
Now, those two things collectively could really set you back. I know certainly did for me, you know, using my own time to try to figure out QuickBooks. You know, I'm a pretty slow learner when it comes to that whole system. And I finally figured it out. But, you know, the whole time value of money as a franchise owner or business owner, you have to really think about that. Is that really the best use of your time?
Well, and that leads right into, the further definition of that is advisors and expertise. So hiring time, hiring people who do pieces of that. In your situation, hiring somebody who already knows how to do QuickBooks, who can handle all of that in a fraction of the time for a small, amount of money. So because your skill sets would lead more towards building your business and exploding it, which leads to more cash coming in than you would have had otherwise, right?
That's right. Absolutely.
So, and of course, the E leads right into M, which is one of my favorite subjects, and that's money. And you know my acronym for that, OPM, other people's money, right? So
your favorite one.
My favorite one. So leveraging your money and your skill sets to attract other money. So investors, partners, even lending institutions want to know that you've got a certain amount of money to put into the operation. But maybe more importantly, they're going to want to know that you can protect their money, the money they give you. So that comes back to expertise and time, right? There's some value to that, and lenders or partners understand that. And I have financed our different acquisitions and businesses through virtually every vehicle out there. So I can speak pretty confidently about what our partners, our advisors, our lenders are looking for when it comes to expertise and time.
Sure,
So
and that actually, not to interrupt you, but don't you find that actually makes it more attractive because you have a complete package of talent rather than just one person or two people trying to do it all? You now actually have people that you could say are experts in each field, right? It's kind of the sum is greater, than just one.
Well, that's absolutely true. And, tying back into what Shannon was talking about from Dave's Hot Chicken, these, if you're a new franchise, banks and lending institutions are nervous. So when you come in as a confident advisor type franchisee, and you can paint a picture or tell a story, we talked about that last week, telling your story, and you have a little bit of money to put into it and all those other kinds of things, it makes it much easier for that person to make the decision to invest in you. Again, whether it's a lending institution or a partner or whatever, they've got to feel confident about that. So time, right, is important, expertise, and then money. So that, the last piece about money is there are ebbs and flows to every business cycle, no matter what business you're in.
Right.
If you are a good practitioner, a good franchisee, you understand the ebbs and flows of revenue in your business, in your geographical locations. And if you understand that, when you're going to need extra money, in other words, perhaps a line of credit or more money from your partners to fill that void until revenues pick back up and cash flow gets where it needs to be. So, those three tied together are super powerful, no matter whether we talk about the next two or not, but I'm going to, because that's what we do. And the next one is people, leveraging your relationships, leveraging your advisors, leveraging the people in your life is critical. And, we always talk about having great advisors. I talk about CPAs, attorneys, and bankers as being our biggest advisors and partners in our operations. If you've already got pre-existing relationships with people in those fields, you may not have needed them. Maybe you knew them from golfing or, some other enterprise, but they know you. And most lenders invest in you. So the people in your life, they need to know who you are prior to getting into this, if at all possible. Or again, if you've got a great story to tell, so they get to know you as they're looking at this thing. People are critical. And never forget, this is something I learned a long time ago. I had a really good friend who was a CPA. We used him in some of our businesses. We were looking for a new lender. By golly, he knew a new lender. He knew somebody he had done business with. He knew somebody who was looking for organizations like ours to put money into. He connected us. We did a loan. It was a match made in heaven, and I had very little to do with it other than the story. Well, and our financials, of course, but whole other thing. So people, and the last piece of the tempo effect is opportunities, because you never know where they're going to come from. You never know how your skill sets are going to fit into those. So looking at your opportunities, understanding them, and a couple stories. Again, I train with stories, right? So every one of the acquisitions we've done in our business over the years, I think we've done 6 acquisitions. Every one of those was related to a relationship that I built, not related to an acquisition. It was related to the relationship and being involved with that person and sharing, intellectual property that we developed with our friends in the industry so that they could succeed and get to another level. So when they decided to get out, we were the first person they called. So having that relationship created opportunities.
Yep.
And the last one I'll share with you, we just decided to buy a daycare. Now, I had no interest in being in daycare, but the bottom line is the biggest issue with our staff, many of them are mothers, some of them are single mothers. They couldn't get good daycare, affordable daycare, reliable daycare, those kinds of things. So we literally was thinking about the problems in our industry with staff, looking at the lake, and said, you know what? If we can give them better daycare, I think that will help solidify and retain our existing staff, but also it will be a recruitment tool to bring in new staff. So we bought a daycare. We created a strategic avenue where our staff can gain subsidized daycare through that. So it will cost them the same or less than what they're paying right now. And they get highly trained, effective, forward-leaning education for their preschool and toddler children. So
that's awesome.
Opportunities spin off into more opportunities and spin off into more of them. They're all related to relationships, which are people, and you got to have money and expertise and time, the most highly leveraged thing that we've got to gain all of that. So this sets you up to learn. And I will tell you, if you get really good at the tempo effect, and this is proven, you will outlearn, outperform, and out-earn everybody else around you. That's the tempo effect. And that's the message for this week, Kristin.
I think that's absolutely amazing, Jerry. And I have to tell you, I think we'd be hard pressed to find another group of employees that wouldn't vote you to be individually and your team there to be employers of choice in small business, because you guys have done such great things. And for those of you who have been following Jerry, I have to tell you, I am also reading his book and all this great information that he's been sharing over the last couple weeks. And we're only at chapter 2, Jerry.
I know, Kristin, there's a lot in there.
I mean, we're only at chapter 2. So if you want to also kind of follow along, again, you can get Jerry's book, Live It to Own It. It's a great read, easy read, and you will not be disappointed. Jerry, thank you again for your time and for sharing the highlights of your book here with us on Pillars of Franchising.
Thanks, Kristin.
But wait, there's one last question.
Uh-oh.
Jerry, is it still a good time to buy a franchise? Or should we flee, run in terror? Tell us, Obi-Wan Akers.
You know, Fred, I still believe this is a phenomenal time. Again, some of the same metrics are in place. There are people with money to lend right now. They're looking for great places to put their money that's going to be safe and give them the return they want. Yes, there are staffing issues. Frankly, we always have staffing issues. Right now, it's a little higher than it is at times in the past. But once again, there are always hurdles to go through. And staffing is one of the things we just have to figure out how to manage. It is manageable. People are looking for employers of choice, as Kristin just touched on. And I will tell you, I think it's kind of a revival time in franchising. So you've got a massive exodus of people from corporate America, and you actually have one of the largest and broadest cross sections of franchises available out there right now as ever in history. So there's a lot of great opportunities. There's money to be loaned. There's expertise. There's amazing mentors like the people that are on this show. Now is an amazing time to get into franchising. So don't look back. Don't second guess yourself. Get out there and start using some of the tools that I've put in the book and we've talked about on the show to pick something. Go get one.
So my only problem with your answer is you didn't phrase it the way Yoda would have. But that's okay, Jerry. And Elizabeth, of course, is muted.
Yeah, but I was going to say, for franchise, right? And if you want to buy his book, I've got it right here. LiveItToOwnIt.com is the easiest place to find it. So be sure to go out there and get one. If you have questions during the show, you can always call in at 323-580-5755. We can get questions to Jerry, to our guests. Up next, we've got Karen Kimsey-Sward, who is going to continue her series on building leaders, which has been really interesting. So if you have any questions for her, go ahead and give us a call. Up next, Karen.
Oh, there's Karen.
Hello.
Hi, Karen. How are you?
I'm good. Happy Thursday.
Oh, that's why I love to call it Friday Eve, because it just feels a little bit closer to the weekend.
Me too.
Yeah. So what did you have for us this week? You're doing such a great series.
Thanks. We're going to continue on with talking about, how do we grow leaders in our franchises? Because that just really seems to be, I think, the biggest angst that we feel in franchises. We're feeling the stress of hiring people, but also how do we grow and how do we keep our leaders? Because we know they're a really important part in making sure they're kind of the linchpin, right? And
Sure.
how to work with our employees and keep our employees. And so part of that today is the importance of trust and really building a trust culture.
I think that's awesome.
And how it just really plays a part in how we as it starts with us, the franchisee, and then making sure that we're modeling that and making sure that our leaders are modeling that as well.
Awesome.
So I have 4 different ways of how we can begin to build trust.
Okay, great.
Okay, we'll start out with, first of all, the number 1 would be, and these are my 4. There are a lot we could talk about, right? But I thought, okay, I'm going to hone it down to 4. 1 is, how about this one? Say what you mean and mean what you say.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Isn't it? Because don't you think a lot of times, as leaders, we'll talk things. We'll say, here are our values. Here's how we're going to live. Here's how we're going to operate. Making sure we really live that. And even when our back's against the wall, making sure that we live those principles. And when we talk about culture, it's not just saying, okay, I'm going to live them. And, I even tell my team is I want to live it. And if I'm not, call me out,
absolutely.
my attention in a way where to say, wait a minute, this isn't lining up.
Yep.
And making sure that our all of our leaders, that we're all modeling this and that we're also coaching each other to make sure that we're being very congruent.
Yes. And I think that's really important. I think it's really good that you encourage your employees to do that. I know I do that too. And I will tell the girls, listen, I'm not feeling well today. So if I give you an off the cuff answer, or you're like, what is wrong with her? Come in the office, close the door and say like, okay, so that didn't go so well. What's going on today? Not that I expect them to manage up all the time, but certainly if something didn't go well, I want to make sure that I'm providing the same expectations that I expect them to give to others. Right. And so it's all setting the example every day.
Absolutely. Because, and we need to give people permission to do that. They're just not going to automatically do it because we're the leader. Right. So we make sure that we're saying to them, and I do the same thing where I'm like, if I say something, if it comes across a certain way, ask more questions. And then again, there's that. And then making sure that I respond to it positively and don't go down their throat when they do bring something up. So it's
Absolutely.
we're congruent there. The second one is it kind of goes hand in hand. It's communicating openly, being transparent. And that's one where it's funny. We talk a lot. I talk with franchisees about this and talk about that transparency. And they're like, well, yeah, well, but, or what about this? And what about that? They always want to have these nuances. And they'll say, a lot of times what happened is in these times, these crazy times with COVID, they're like, how can I be honest? If I'm really honest and transparent, people might want to leave. So I would always tell them, it's really important to have the reality, but then also have the hope and optimism with it too. By not sharing reality, I think people they know what's going on. So by not really speaking some of the truth, so it's about, hey, we have an issue, here's what's going on, and we have a plan. So as long as we're candid and we say, here's how we're going to solve it, and those go hand in hand, people respect you more, and there's more of a trust where they're like, okay, I'm going to stick around here and I'm going to work together. And I think that's where I think instead of just sweeping difficult issues under the rug, it's really working and saying, here's how you can help us. And then together working as a team, that really does build the trust.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Yep. Very good.
And then the third one is, how about this one? Staying steady under pressure. And this is one that I have to practice because, I'm type A and so I have to go take a deep breath. So it's staying steady under pressure, because my dad would always tell me, Karen, when your back's against the wall, or when someone's back is against the wall, that really is their true character. It's really, it's how they show up. And so what happens as the leader, many times people take their cue from us. And right. And I had a leader one time that, a couple leaders this way, where they're really good.
Right.
And something would happen, they would just totally blow up.
Yeah. Sometimes it's a matter of taking that deep breath, or saying, I need 5 minutes, walk away, and then come back around to address it in a couple minutes. Right.
Absolutely. Because if you don't do that and you keep doing the blowing up over time, what happens is people don't want to tell you bad news. They don't want to trust you with information. They're going to hide things from you. And that, again, really undermines the trust.
Yeah. I have that issue when we ruin a $5,000 shower, or maybe we back into a mailbox and wreck a car, things like that could be totally preventable.
It's hard, isn't it?
Yeah. You often need to take a couple of hours and a really big, deep breath.
Exactly. And that's where I use the word grace. Okay.
Yes.
People give me grace every day. I provide them with a little bit of grace,
Mm-hmm.
So that's been my key word. So,
yes.
Okay. Which goes into the fourth one, and that's don't play the blame game. And that one is, once that starts, I've noticed if it starts in a culture, it's really not good. Because if something happens and then everybody's blaming everybody else. And I'm always like, okay, let's take a look first at the process. Because in franchises, we have processes.
Sure, we do.
Let's take a look at the process first. Okay, if it's not the process and it's someone, it's really addressing it directly.
Yep.
Talking with them about it and talking about, there is accountability there. And it's also making sure that you're directed to the person and not talking about the person to somebody else.
Yes.
Right. And undermining them, because someone's going to say, well, if they're talking about them, they're, then you're going to talk about me too.
Yeah.
So making sure that we model that, and that we also make sure our leaders are modeling it, and not pointing. There's not a lot of pointing fingers and pointing fingers at each other.
Yeah, I agree. And, I think that in some systems, the right thing to do is to make sure that you build in the right accountability tools, so that you can't have this kind of point the fingers both ways. Make sure that you can clearly define where did the process fail?
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
So.
Because then it's not necessarily sometimes at people. It could be a process.
Sure.
And if it's people, you're right. There's the accountability in place where then you can handle it. And that's trust too, because when they see the way you handle it, other people trust you because of how you handle it. And then also as your other leaders have handled it too. Yeah.
Often we used to say, this is no longer a training issue. Now this becomes a performance issue, right?
Exactly.
So,
and again, how you handle that sets up the trust for the organization, sets up trust for the leaders. And when that's how you operate and work, they want to work for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Karen, thank you again so much for all of your help. It sounds like my dog thinks he hears something. I don't know what it is, but he's a little one.
He does. That's right. That's okay.
Yeah.
It's part of it. Go ahead.
I turned on the flashlight, so he thinks someone must be here. Usually the UPS guy. Who knows?
Happy times. So
yes.
anyhow, but thanks a lot. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Karen. I really appreciate you coming to share some of your tips with us again, and we'll look forward to seeing you again next week. And for those of you that joined us again, next week, we will be back with more Pillars of Franchising. I do want to remind you that if you are thinking about buying a franchise, if franchising interests you, if you think that it's something that might be up your alley and you want to explore some of the opportunities available, Pillars of Franchising does offer a consulting aspect to it. So please go to the website, fill out the Your Dream Starts Here portion, and we will certainly get in touch with you to discuss what kinds of brands seem to fit with the lifestyle you're looking for, the budget that you have, and the skill sets that you want to use in your business. Again, this has been Pillars of Franchising. We would like to thank Shannon Swenson for joining us from Dave's Hot Chicken, for coming on the show today. And please be sure to like, share, and comment on this episode. And as always, we want to thank Ray Pillar, David Kajanik, Jerry Akers, our $1 Million mentors, for their insight and wisdom. I am Kristin Selmeczy, your fourth $1 Million mentor, and together we are your resource for franchising success. We help you buy and grow your franchise to make your dreams a reality. This has been Pillars of Franchising, and the dream starts here.
Pillars of